I am Alison Osborne, and I work in the Northern Hub for Veterans and Military Families Research at Northumbria University. This research video will report an overview of some findings from my PhD, looking at dispersed military families. The family has always had a significant role in the wider functioning of the military. Historically, military families have moved around with serving military personnel, often termed following the flag or camp followers. The presence of family is often an important foundation of psychological stability. However, the perceived role and identity of military family is shifting alongside the introduction of government and MOD initiatives and policies designed to increase the flexibility of serving personnel and encourage family stability. Instead of following the flag, it is increasingly more accessible for families to remain living dispersed from the serving member of their family. Existing data from the Tri-Service Families Continuous Attitude Survey for the last 6 years suggests that around 24% of families are already living geographically dispersed from the serving member of their family. There's also been a reported increase in the geospatial distribution of military families in England since the 2010 Strategic Defence and Security Review, with greater numbers of military families living in locations beyond the commuting distance to military bases. Separation is central to dispersed military family life. However, current evidence is limited to the effect of operational deployments on spouses and children, especially since 2001 in the Iraq and Afghanistan campaigns. Family separations as a result of operational deployments are usually for an extended fixed period of time. For those living geographically dispersed, separation often occurs during the working week, with the military family member returning at the weekends. The length and duration of separation through dispersal can vary, but critically is often intermittent. There's not a lot of research looking into dispersed military families, particularly in the UK. However, there have been 3 reports released that have begun to shed some light on the experiences of these families. Each of these reports reflects on each service of the UK Armed Forces with slightly different focuses. Overall, the findings from these reports indicated that for military families, they live dispersed in an attempt to gain constancy in their children's education, for familial stability, home ownership, and progression of spousal careers. However, as a result, the families made themselves vulnerable to a loss of identity as members of the military community, felt excluded from the military community, and reported poor communication. There was also confusion around availability and access to support, a financial burden, and lack of understanding from civilian friends. There's no official definition of a dispersed military family. However, for my PhD, a dispersed military family was defined as a military family that lives geographically separate from the military member of their family, not as a result of relationship separation. These families primarily live in civilian communities away from military bases, but can live in military housing. Other phrases that have been used to identify similarly defined families include weekending and living married and accompanied. Researchers explored the psychological effects of separation on military families due to operational deployments. However, a gap remains in research pertaining to the impact of non-operational related separations, such as living geographically dispersed. Literature looking at dispersed military families has been minimal and not tri-service. Consequently, my PhD aimed to explore the psychosocial impact of intermittent separation on dispersed military families. To do this, I adopted a mixed methods approach over 2 phases. The purpose of the first phase was to provide an understanding on what is already known about dispersed military families and separation. Phase 1A involved a systematic narrative review to answer the question, what is the impact of separation on military families? Phase 1B reported geospatial analysis of publicly available data to determine if there was a suitable proxy variable for the geolocation of dispersed military families. Phase 2 provided primary research findings through semi-structured interviews with dispersed spouses, partners, and children of UK military personnel. For this research video, we're going to consider Phase 2. 28 participants were recruited across England and Scotland, with 23 spouses, 4 partners, and 1 child. Participants were recruited primarily through social media and through word of mouth. They were aged between 21 and 52 with a wide range of dispersal experience, from 3 months to 12 years. Interviews lasted around 45 to 60 minutes, and the transcripts were analysed using framework analysis. 5 themes were identified: identity, loneliness, well-being, familial relationships, and accessing support. I'm going to give a brief overview of each theme with some quotes from the participants. The identity to which participants ascribed appeared to fluctuate in relation to the separation. Difficulties were experienced in determining where participants felt they fitted in either civilian or military communities due to a lack of shared experience and a perceived lack of understanding from others. There was a disconnect between identifying as a military family in practical terms and not feeling part of the military community. However, for many participants, separation allowed them to become more independent. They experienced greater responsibilities for the household, finances, and the parenting role for those with children. Stability of home life meant that participants could explore employment and career opportunities, as well as any interests and hobbies. Many participants strived for this independence, but also acknowledged that they had little choice but to become independent. Loneliness was an integral theme in participant narratives of dispersal. There were 2 distinct types of loneliness experienced by these participants. Emotional loneliness was felt through the loss of contact with a military member of their family. The close relationship unit was challenged through difficulties communicating and a lack of physical comfort. Social loneliness was as a result of the lack of connection and support from social networks. Participants discussed the negative impact of not feeling as though they belonged to the military community. They tried to buffer the social loneliness through employment and connections. Interestingly, loneliness appeared to be exacerbated for those with children. These participants discussed feeling as though they operated as a single parent during separation. The extra responsibilities as a result of this and the reinforcement of separation from the military member of their family left many feeling as though they were in an unequal relationship due to their discrepancies in parenting. Living separately from the military member of the family through dispersal had an impact on participants' well-being. All participants reported stress across the separation period, affecting their mental health and emotional responses. The stress was difficult to manage due to the increase in responsibilities when the military member of the family was away. This was exacerbated by the intimate nature of the dispersal, with greater pressure placed on the weekend when they returned home. Relationships were affected, and some participants articulated that experiencing operational deployments had been easier than living dispersed, as it was a more stable separation. Regardless, participants approached dispersal with an it is what it is mentality, focusing on the positive aspects and powering through for the benefit of the family. A positive outlook in years of dispersal experience created an ambivalence to the separation, but this did not help all participants to cope with the challenges of dispersal. Some maladaptive coping was reported, and support networks and a connection with the military community appeared to be key to the coping. At the centre of families is their relationships. It was important for participants to find a balance between weekend activities, maintaining relationships, and finding time to relax. The weekends, or when the military member of the family returned home, was the most challenging period of the dispersal. The impact of the condensed time to spend together was felt by all participants. Adjustments to the roles and responsibilities each time they were separated and reunited was difficult, especially when the military family member had expectations that everything was as they left it. However, for some participants, the repeated separations and reunions became part of a routine. Communication using technology was an important tool in maintaining familial relationships during separation. Although interactive methods of communication, such as video calls, enhanced military parents' relationships with their children, participants reported that technology could not replace face-to-face contact. Children spent a lot of time missing their military parent, especially when they missed out on key events such as sports days. The intimate nature of dispersal caused confusion for younger children, and many had a negative emotional reactions to the military parent upon reunions. Older children appeared to show more acceptance to the separation. Participants' access to support appeared to be highly dependent upon how connected they felt to the community and their understanding of what support services were available. They did not feel as though they were treated as or entitled to the same support as other military families. Military welfare was primarily located on military bases, and some participants did not find the support physically accessible or inclusive. For those without children, this was especially true, as support was reported as often focusing on parents and children. A military background or having lived on a military base before dispersal appeared to increase the likelihood that participants knew that support was available, but many reported that they did not know who to contact. Communities were at the centre of support for participants during separation, but again the geographical distance caused problems in connecting with others. Consequently, participants relied on civilian communities to provide social contact and social support. Unfortunately, many reported a lack of understanding and further difficulties in connecting to others. Similar experiences were reported with the military community, particularly for those who had never lived on base. Only a small minority of participants knew other dispersed families. Nevertheless, all participants acknowledged the benefit of connecting with other dispersed families, military or civilian. Phase 2 supplied the primary research findings for this PhD through the semi-structured interviews with 28 civilian spouses, partners, and children of dispersed UK military personnel. To summarise, participants reported that separation had an impact on the identity, levels of loneliness, both emotional and social, and their overall well-being. The extent to which participants coped with dispersal was dependent upon their perceived connection to the military community, social networks, and available support. Relationships between the dispersed family and the military member of their family were also affected. Throughout the narratives, it was clear that the intimate nature of dispersal exacerbated the challenges participants experienced. But a positive outlook, prior dispersal experience, and fostering independence helped to buffer this to a certain extent. Following Phase 2, findings were integrated with those from Phase 1 and highlighted 6 overarching topics for discussion. These included military identity, loneliness, stability and dispersal, psychological well-being, and coping and support. For more information on these, the wider PhD research and recommendations, please get in touch. Thank you for watching.